take a moment now before we continue our service to pause. Sit comfortably in your chair, your feet on the ground in front of you, your hands in a comfortable position. If you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. But with me now, just slowly breathe in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. And breathe in and out. And keep breathing and take just a moment to pay attention to this body that is yours. This glorious, glorious creature you are. Your hands and your feet and your heart. And breathe. And breathe in gratitude and hope. We're grateful to be together again. The reading today are the words of Unitarian Universalist revolutionary religious educator Sophia Lyon Fox. For so the children come, she writes, and so they have been coming, always in the same way they come. Born of the seed of a man and woman, no angels herald their beginnings. No prophets predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to know where the babe that will save humankind. Yet each night a child is born is a holy night. Fathers and mothers sitting beside their children's cribs feel glory in the sight of new life beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end? Or will it ever end? Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. I'm delighted to be back together with you again today, and I want to express before I start my sermon, want to express my gratitude for you for your part in helping me get to where I got a couple of weeks ago with the MFC. I do want to share that preparing that sermon for you on the Cambridge platform last month, that was the question they asked me about congregational polity, was the Cambridge platform. So you were there with me in the room. I want to start with some singing. Once in royal David's city stood a lowly cattle shed, where a mother laid her baby in a manger for his bed. So begins one of the old favorite songs telling the story of the birth of Jesus to Mary and Joseph in a manger behind an inn in the town of Bethlehem. A little boy, born like those before and after him, always the same way. And who did this blessed babe grow up to be? Did he become a quiet carpenter like his father, Joseph? Did he live a quiet rural life? Was he the boy his parents hoped and expected him to be? Did he fit in with all the other kids? Well, the Christian scriptures don't give us a lot of information about Jesus' young life, though there are two stories that point toward what might be coming, that shake Mary and Joseph's expectations up a little bit. It was tradition in those times for parents to offer a sacrifice for their firstborn son at the temple in Jerusalem. And so the Gospel of Luke tells us that Mary and Joseph took their infant son to Jerusalem, where they met Simeon, a very old man who'd been promised that he wouldn't die until he met the Messiah. And here he was. Still, there he was in swaddling clothes. Simeon responds by singing out praises to his God, which kind of weirded Mary and Joseph out, if you think about it. And then Simeon goes on to say to them, "This child is destined for the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be opposed, so that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too. Not exactly what one expects someone to say to you when they meet your beautiful new baby for the first time. And then later, when Jesus was older, around 12 years old, his parents again took him to Jerusalem for Passover, as they did every year. When they were finished, Mary and Joseph started out on the road home, but realized a little while along the way that Jesus wasn't with them. They left him behind. Now, leaving aside the fact that they left their 12-year-old child behind, so they rushed back to Jerusalem in a panic. And where did they find him? At the arcade? Playing marbles in the street? Buying just one more sweet date in the market? No. After 3 days of searching, 3 days, they found him in the temple with the learned men, asking them questions, smart questions, annoying questions, gathering their wisdom. And again, Mary and Joseph were more than a little surprised. From the very beginning of the story that is told at Christmas time, there were signs and statements, portents, that this boy, though born in a lowly place of lowly people, was not going to live what anyone would call a lowly life. Despite the expectations of his parents or the innkeepers or anyone else who you might have asked what the life of a boy born in a stable to a carpenter and his young wife would look like. And however we feel about his divinity or the details of his birth, this boy grew up to change the world. This boy grew up to challenge the authority of oppressors, both the Roman occupiers and the leaders of his own religious and political culture. This boy did not grow up to fit in. He grew up to challenge the commercialization of religious ritual. He grew up to challenge the norms of his time by spending that time with and ministering to the outcasts and the untouchables, the prostitutes and tax collectors, the lepers and the foreigners. This boy grew up, and by his message, his very way of being in the world, asked his followers to give up their old lives and follow his new way. For some, he brought liberation. For others, like Herod and the chief priests, his message and his very presence brought fear and uncertainty. For others, he brought the death of old ways and the birth of new. In his poem, The Journey of the Magi, T.S. Eliot documents the words of one of the Magi upon returning home after journeying to see the infant Jesus. All this was a long time ago, I remember, and I would do it again, but set down this. Were we led all that way for birth or for death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence, and no doubt, I have seen birth and death, but had thought that they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation, with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad, he said, of another death. This baby was not born to an expected life. But the stories we have tell us that with only occasional doubt, he embraced the way he was called to be in the world and transformed the world around him. I read earlier the words of Unitarian religious education pioneer Sophia Lyon-Fawes. Each night a child is born, she said, is a holy night. As we welcome our children into our world one by one, as we greet each holy birth, what are we expecting? What do we hope them to be? What do we expect them to do? How do we support their embracing of their self? We may say that we have broad and open hopes and expectations, but from the beginning of their life, children live in a world where we teach them to conform to our ideas of what is right and proper and acceptable. Well, before the beginning of their life, actually, my partner Mark and I shared a house with a couple once who announced they were expecting a child. Everybody was delighted. Our friends, though, decided that they didn't want to know the gender of their child before it was born. They wanted to be open to possibility. They did really well with this. The fascinating thing, though, was to watch their very liberal friends grapple with not knowing this fact. But what will we buy? Pink or blue? Flowers or tractors? How will you know how to decorate? People were very uncomfortable, some of them very angry even, that expectations were not being answered. It was fascinating, truly, and frightening that we live out a need to place a little being into a box like that before it's even among us. And we continue as our children grow to struggle between greeting this new stranger in our midst and their uniqueness with our need to have them fit into the world into which they are born. And the world is changing, truly. But still, what are our expectations about boys? That they like wearing dark colors, that they should want to wear utilitarian clothes knowing they're likely to be getting them dirty, that they're going to be tough and learn not to cry when they're hurt or insulted or frightened, that they not be frightened, that they learn to treat others as outside of themselves and separate from themselves, that they be strong and independent and not swayed by emotion, that they like rough play, that they're going to love sports and do well at them, that despite this, they will sit in class and behave when they're in school, that they'll grow up to be powerful and in charge, that they'll want to be a doctor or a fireman or a soldier and not a nurse or a teacher or an artist, that they'll grow up and fall in love with a woman and have children. Think about little Oliver Button and the expectations his father had of him. And our expectations about girls? That they'll like to wear dresses and pretty things, that they'll never, ever get dirty. That they're going to be sensitive, but learn to subsume their emotions when they make other people uncomfortable. That they will learn to relate well to everyone around them and do the work of making everybody else comfortable. That they will not be loud and rough. That they will be polite and considerate and always at school and do well in reading and writing, but not in math or science. That they will want to be a nurse or a teacher or a veterinarian and not a police officer or a lawyer or a construction worker. That they'll grow up and fall in love with a man and have children and be a mother. Think of the old Christmas song, Up on the Rooftop. First comes the stocking of little Nell. Oh, dear Santa, fit it well. Give her a dolly that laughs and cries, one that will open and shut her eyes. Next comes the stocking of little Will. Oh, just see what a glorious fill. Here is a hammer and lots of tacks, also a ball and a whip that cracks. Now, the world is changing, and all of us may not have all of these expectations, but they operate in our dominant culture of our society, and the costs for violating or ignoring them are often very high. I will share with you a moment I had this morning. I have a scarf, a bright green scarf that I knitted for myself wrapped around my neck. And I stopped to get myself a soda on the way, and I took it off before I went into the gas station because I was worried about people's expectations of men. Rather than celebrate the richness of life, we find our society punishing transgressors, often violently. But it doesn't have to be that way. Last year, I read the story of little 4-year-old, he'd be 5 or 6 now, Dyson. People, the media had called him Princess Boy, who lived in Seattle. You may have heard about this. He was like Oliver Button, but he loved to dance. He loved to wear a tutu, a pink sparkly tutu, wanted to wear it to school. He just loved being a princess. His parents' response was to be supportive and loving of this, to say, this is our beautiful boy and we love him. The teachers all of the male teachers in the school one day on Halloween, all of the male teachers came to school wearing tutus one day. The custodians, the principals, the security officers came to school wearing tutus in support of this little boy. A counselor who had met with the parents said that parents who invest now in loving and accepting their children there's less anxiety and depression in the future for their kids. There are fewer therapy bills. His little brother, his younger brother said, when asked about how he felt about all this, said, "He's my brother and I want him to be happy. If he's happy, I'm happy because I love him." Our children bring so much with them into the world, new ways of being along with old ways of being, unique combinations of conformity and radical difference. And of course, we welcome them each as they come into our lives. So, what would we do if the young Jesus walked through our doors and started asking annoying questions? Or Oliver Button? Or Dylan, the princess boy? How would we greet them? It's not like this doesn't happen every single time someone new walks through that door. The stranger does not need to be a radical prophet or a nonconformist boy to confront us with difference. How do we, and before I go on, I want to say, the we I'm asking is a larger we than just this room. So I'm not standing here pointing fingers at this room. I'm questioning our entire selves as Unitarian Universalists. How do we welcome those who speak a different language? How do we welcome those who have mental or physical challenges? How do we welcome those who don't have as much money or education as we do? How do we welcome those who look different than we do? Every day, newcomers walk through the door of Unitarian Universalist congregations like this one. Every year, we welcome new members into our community. These individuals who have chosen to share themselves with us and are asking us to share ourselves with them. These people who want to join in the work and the vision and the worship of this community, who want to walk together with us in the work of love. What will we ask of them? Will we ask them to become like us? To think like us? To believe like us? To think the things we think are important are important? And if you think we Unitarian Universalists don't do this or ask those questions, I'll share with you that I had a conversation after a sermon once, not here, with a man who asked me how we could get newcomers to come and see how great and right and wonderful we are and convince them to be just like us. Quote, verbatim. And I have a friend, an African-American, middle-aged, Unitarian Universalist minister, who was greeted at the door of one of our congregations with this: "Welcome. This is like no church you've ever been to." Think about the assumptions behind that statement. Think about the blindness. So I want you to stop for a moment and think. Think in your head, or your heart, wherever it is, the first time you walked through a door of a Unitarian Universalist congregation. How were you welcomed? How were you greeted? What, when you were welcomed, told you that you are welcome here? And what, when you were welcomed, told you that this piece of you wasn't quite so welcome here? Just think for a moment. I'm not going to make you say it out loud, but think. In his book, Welcoming the Stranger, Patrick Kiefert asked us if we are willing to accept that the stranger, the newcomer, is actually a stranger. Someone, something new, with their own life, their own motives, their own understandings. Not a potential recruit to become a clone of us, but a newness to be related to as someone we wish to remain themselves. Now, of course, that's a dangerous thing to do. My colleague, the Reverend Connie Grant in Evanston, recently reminded her congregation that by accepting and welcoming new members, we were ensuring that the we that did the welcoming would cease to exist, and that a new we was about to come into being, forever altered by the presence and perspectives of those new members. And I want to see how the world has changed in the town where the Princess Boy lives. I want to see how the we has changed now that Oliver Button is a star. These newcomers bring with them their own history and their own uniqueness, their own fears and doubts, their own hopes and ways of being in the world. If we let them, they will surprise us. Surprise us with who they are and what they bring, if we let them. If we are open to being surprised, if we are committed to inviting the stranger into our midst, if we allow that our world might be, will be, must be changed by that encounter, if we don't show them that we really don't want to be surprised, if we don't allow our fear to block our welcoming the stranger, if we don't hold too tightly to our expectations. People, look east. The time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth, set the table. People, look east and sing today. Love, the guest, is on the way. And we're glad they're here. Glad they're here to remind us that we're not alone. Glad they're here to share with us, to sing and dance and walk with us. Glad they're here to bring us hope and remind us to welcome the stranger into our midst and greet them with love and celebration. Glad they are here to remake us into something even more beautiful and powerful. May it be so. And so let's sing. Sing a song of welcoming, number 346 in your hymnal. Come sing a song with me.